June 4th, 1943, Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia. Unteroffizier Herman Butcher gripped the railing, his legs unsteady after 14 days crossing the Atlantic. Through the morning haze, he witnessed something that contradicted 3 years of Nazi propaganda. American dock workers, white and Negro, operating side by side with machinery that seemed decades ahead of its time. Women in coveralls operated cranes. Children sold newspapers at the gates. Nobody fled at the sight of enemy uniforms. "Die Spinnen, die Amerikaner," he whispered. "The Americans are crazy." What Butcher and 2,500 veterans of Rommel's Afrika Korps were about to witness would prove more devastating to Nazi ideology than any battlefield defeat. The Norfolk base sprawled across 4,300 acres, handling more tonnage in a single morning than Hamburg managed weekly. But scale wasn't what stunned these prisoners. It was the normalcy. Civilians wandered near warships. Vendors sold coffee within sight of military installations. A brass band played at a nearby rally. These 2,500 men were the first wave of what would become 425,000 German prisoners held in America by war's end. What awaited them wasn't just American abundance. That story has been told. They would witness something far more unsettling, a nation at war that refused to act like it, a society so secure it treated mortal enemies like errant houseguests, and customs so incomprehensible they would shatter every certainty these soldiers held. Processing at Norfolk began with what Butcher called the first impossibility. German military doctrine held that prisoners were assets to exploit or burdens to minimize. The Geneva Convention was acknowledged when convenient, ignored when not. Yet here, American officers read Geneva Convention rules in fluent German, explaining rights, asking about dietary needs. Jewish American personnel distributed Red Cross packages, while explaining kosher meals were available for Jewish prisoners. Several Wehrmacht soldiers laughed nervously, thinking it mockery. It wasn't. Medical inspections defied all logic. German prisoners with wounds received the same penicillin, that miracle drug barely available to German field hospitals, as American soldiers. Swiss Red Cross inspector Guy Matreau noted in July 1943, "Medical treatment equals or exceeds that given to American personnel." Prisoners expressed disbelief. The most incomprehensible sight came during their first meal. Germans and Americans, enemies who had tried to kill each other in convoy battles, ate in the same facility. Same food lines, same quality meals. The Americans showed no particular interest, more focused on a baseball broadcast than on enemies sitting 50 feet away. The 3-day train journey west provided the next shock. Unlike secretive prisoner movements in Germany, American authorities made no attempt to hide the POWs. The trains weren't boxcars, but passenger coaches with cushioned seats. At Washington's Union Station, German prisoners watched American families seeing off soldiers. Wives kissed husbands goodbye in public. Teenagers shared milkshakes. The same platform hosted enemies and families, separated only by wind. The trains passed industrial areas that should have been camouflaged, hidden, protected. Instead, factories displayed their names in huge letters. The Glenn L. Martin aircraft plant in Baltimore had parking lots visible from the train, filled with workers' personal automobiles. Prisoners could count the B-26 bombers lined up for delivery. No attempt at concealment. Through Pennsylvania, coal mines and steel mills ran continuous shifts. The Camp Hearn, Texas, opened December 1942 on 720 acres. It would house up to 4,800 German prisoners in conditions exceeding what most knew as civilians. The infrastructure itself challenged German understanding. Wooden barracks with electric lights, indoor plumbing with hot water, individual beds with mattresses, sheets, and blankets, recreation halls with ping-pong tables, musical instruments, and libraries. Swiss inspector Emil Sandstrom noted in August 1943, "Conditions exceed Geneva Convention requirements and surpass living conditions many of these men knew in Germany." Camp commander, Lieutenant Colonel Cecil Stiles, addressed arrivals in German. He explained that prisoners would largely govern themselves within the compounds. They would elect spokesmen, organize activities, manage their own schedules. Self-governance for enemies seemed like either weak. The camp canteen stunned them most. A store where prisoners could purchase goods with script earned from voluntary labor. Cigarettes, chocolate, soap, writing materials, musical instruments, art supplies. The War Department authorized these sales, believing small comforts would maintain morale and reduce escapes. The idea that enemy prisoners could shop, could choose purchases, could have wants beyond survival, scrambled military thinking. By September 1943, severe labor shortages led to POW employment throughout Texas. Prisoners earned 80 cents per day, the same base pay as American privates. At the King Ranch near Kingsville, German POWs encountered American agriculture on a scale defying European comprehension. The ranch covered 825,000 acres, larger than Rhode Island. Germans worked alongside Mexican-American vaqueros and some Negro ranch hands. The racial mixing contradicted Nazi hierarchy theories. Prisoners documented their amazement in letters that passed military censors. A single combine harvester replaced dozens of workers. Trucks, not horse-drawn wagons, transported crops. The ranch even used aircraft to survey cattle herds. At cotton processing facilities throughout Texas, POWs witnessed speeds impossible by European standards. The Hearn Cotton Oil Mill processed more cotton in a day than German textile mills handled in a month. Yet workers took regular breaks, ate full lunches, listened to radios while working. Productivity through good treatment rather than harsh discipline contradicted Wehrmacht experience. The prisoners discovered American farmers discussed politics openly. Declassified FBI reports noted Germans were shocked by farmers criticizing Roosevelt freely without fear. At one farm near Bryan, a farmer told a Department of Agriculture inspector to go to hell. The farmer faced no consequences. Such defiance would mean death in Nazi Germany. Christmas 1943 at Camp Hearn is extensively documented. The entire town of Hearn, population 2,000, mobilized to ensure enemy prisoners had a proper celebration. Local churches collected 4,800 individual gift packages. Schools contributed handmade cards. The American Legion Post 164, veterans who had fought Germans in the First World War, donated cigarettes, candy, and sports equipment to current German enemies. The camp Christmas tree stood 30 feet tall, decorated with electric lights burning continuously. Local churches performed German Christmas carols. First Methodist Church choir director Mrs. Sarah Patterson, whose son served in Italy, led the performance. The cognitive dissonance of American mothers singing to enemy soldiers while their sons fought Germans broke several prisoners emotionally. The Christmas feast included roast turkey, ham, sweet potatoes, cornbread stuffing, cranberry sauce, pie, ice cream, beer, and wine, approximately 5,000 calories per person. Meanwhile, German civilian rations provided 1,200 calories daily when available. Working in American facilities exposed POWs to casual abundance that seemed like mockery. At the Alcoa aluminum plant in Rockdale, workers discarded more aluminum scrap daily than German aircraft factories could acquire weekly. At the Stokely Brothers Cannery in Cameron, perfectly edible produce was discarded for minor cosmetic flaws. Tomatoes slightly underripe, corn with irregular kernels, all destroyed while German civilians faced starvation. A letter from Corporal Friedrich Mueller stated, "Today we destroyed hundreds of pounds of fruit because it did not meet canning standards. Fruit that would be treasure in Germany is garbage here. The American supervisor apologized to us for the waste. At the Lone Star Steel plant in Dangerfield, monthly production exceeded the entire Ruhr Valley's annual output before Allied bombing. Workers competed for production bonuses, suggested efficiency improvements. Charts displayed each shift's production like sports scores. Morale drove productivity more than supervision. By early 1944, the Provost Marshal General's office established sophisticated educational operations. The camp library grew from 500 books to over 5,000 by August 1944. Works by German authors banned by the Nazis were available. Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, Erich Maria Remarque's All Quiet on the Western Front. Works by Jewish authors. A German POW could read books that would have meant death to possess in Nazi Germany. Sam Houston State Teachers College provided correspondence courses. College records show 340 Germans enrolled in English, American history, mathematics, and agricultural science. The camp newspaper, Der Spiegel, The Mirror, evolved from Nazi propaganda in early 1943 to democratic discussions by late 1944. Declassified documents reveal sophisticated psychological operations identifying 3 prisoner categories: anti-Nazis, 10%, non-political, 75%, and ardent Nazis, 15%. The transformation rate exceeded expectations. Approximately 60% showed measurable movement toward democratic ideals after 6 months. 3 documented cases illustrate the transformation. Hermann Butcher arrived as a convinced Nazi. His turning point came Christmas 1943, when Herne citizens gave presents to enemy prisoners. He wrote, "These people, whose sons we had tried to kill, gave us gifts. Their kindness wasn't weakness, but strength, the confidence of victors who knew they had already won, not just the war, but the peace that would follow." He immigrated to America in 1953, worked for General Motors until retirement. Georg Gottner escaped in 1945, lived illegally in America for 40 years under an assumed name, married an American, raised children. When he surrendered in 1985, he had been American longer than German. Of 425,000 German POWs in America, only 2,222 escape attempts occurred, 0.52%. Post-war surveys found 74% held favorable views of American democracy. Immigration records. In 1984, 50 former Camp Herne POWs returned to Texas. Former enemies embraced former guards. Wehrmacht veterans placed flowers at the American Legion Memorial. Fritz Zimmermann said, "We came as enemies, believing in racial superiority and national destiny. We left as friends, understanding that democracy's chaos is its strength, that diversity creates rather than weakens unity." The German POWs who reached America between 1943 and 1946 witnessed sights that seemed impossible. Every casual freedom, every small kindness, every puzzling generosity accumulated into ideological transformation. They expected to find a weak, divided nation. Instead, they discovered a society so confident it could afford mercy to enemies. America's greatest victory wasn't on battlefields, but in prison camps, where enemies became advocates through the simple act of witnessing American reality. The sights that stunned them were unusual only to eyes trained by tyranny. To American eyes, they were just life, messy, imperfect, but free. Their transformation proves that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through destruction, but through demonstration, not through propaganda, but through reality, not through hatred, but through humanity.